Women don't want men to watch this video, not because there is something sinister, dark, or manipulative happening behind the scenes, but because everything revealed here exposes a psychological pattern that most men never notice. A pattern quietly operating in relationships, attraction, emotional connection, and feminine behavior that becomes uncomfortable when spoken out loud, especially in a world where both men and women are constantly performing socially acceptable versions of themselves. This secret women hide is not a literal secret locked inside a diary or whispered among friends. It is a deeply human instinct, a subconscious strategy shaped by evolution, emotional intelligence, and the way femininity expresses vulnerability and desire. And the reason it stays hidden is because when men finally learn this truth, it completely changes the dynamics of how they show up, how they communicate, how they carry themselves, and how they respond to emotional cues. The truth begins with this. Women are far more attracted to a man's internal state than his external performance. Yet most women will never explicitly admit this because they know the moment a man starts performing confidence instead of actually embodying it, the energy becomes fake, forced, unattractive, and even repelling. Women do not fall for words, they fall for presence. They do not fall for pursuit. They fall for groundedness. They do not fall for men who seek validation, but men who radiate purpose. This reality is so powerful that many women would rather a man stay unaware of it, because the moment a man becomes self-aware of his emotional value, his masculine frame, and the power of not chasing, the entire structure of dating changes forever, and suddenly the man who used to feel powerless becomes the man who stands in his worth, who is no longer swayed by emotional turbulence or quick to sacrifice his dignity for acceptance. And the interesting part is this. Women don't consciously try to hide this secret, but instead they protect it because it is deeply tied to how they test, evaluate, and filter men. They want to see if a man naturally embodies strength without being instructed, if he can remain calm without being told to be calm, if he can lead without being asked to lead, and if he can hold emotional tension without crumbling. When a woman tests a man, she is not trying to play games or be cruel. She is subconsciously checking whether his confidence is real or fragile, whether his self-worth is internal or dependent on her reactions, and whether he is a man who can protect, provide stability, and stand firm in difficult situations. Women don't reveal this because the moment a man realizes that tests are not attacks but invitations to show strength, he stops reacting emotionally, he stops becoming defensive, and he stops losing attraction points through insecurity, neediness, or panic. In truth, women respect men who don't fall apart in the face of emotional pressure, men who do not take everything personally, men who do not beg, negotiate, or chase for approval. They admire men who remain composed, self-respecting, and selective. And this type of man is rare because most men are conditioned to believe that giving more, pleasing harder, texting faster, and explaining deeper makes them more attractive, when in reality it is the opposite. The more a man tries to earn love, the more he loses himself, and the more he loses himself. The more a woman feels emotionally unsafe with him. Women desire emotional safety, but emotional safety for women does not come from a man who always agrees, always submits, or always follows her lead. It comes from a man who knows who he is, who stands firm in his values, who doesn't collapse in arguments, who can listen without breaking, who can love without losing direction, and who can give without resenting. And this leads to another part of the secret. Women are far more attracted to a man's boundaries than his affection, because boundaries signal strength, maturity, and self-control, while excessive affection without boundaries signals desperation and insecurity. Women hide this because it contradicts what society teaches men about romance, where men are told to be endlessly giving, endlessly available, endlessly emotional, endlessly expressive, and endlessly attentive, not realizing that constant availability kills desire. Overexpression reduces mystery, and emotional oversharing eliminates polarity. Women don't say this aloud because it sounds harsh, but attraction is not kindness. Attraction is polarity, and polarity requires difference. Strength balancing softness, direction balancing intuition, certainty balancing emotion. Men lose attraction not because they are not good enough, but because they abandon their masculine center in an attempt to please or impress a woman. And here is the deeper secret. Women will never fully trust a man she has power over. She will never feel safe with a man she can manipulate emotionally. She will never respect a man whose self-worth depends on her approval, and she will never be attracted to a man who gives up his independence, ambition, or identity to win her heart. In private, many women admit they want a man who is strong not in aggression but in spirit, a man who leads not through domination but through self-discipline, a man who doesn't seek control but cannot be controlled. And this is the part that feels threatening to women the moment a man understands this. He stops competing with other men. He stops over-investing in low-quality relationships. He stops tolerating disrespect, and he becomes the kind of man women chase rather than the kind they test, drain, or take for granted. When a man realizes his value, women's behavior toward him changes immediately. They become softer, more cooperative, more feminine, more vulnerable, and more open, because feminine energy naturally relaxes in the presence of grounded masculine energy. This is the feminine secret women rarely reveal. Their behavior is a reflection of your energy, not your words. A woman mirrors the emotional environment you create. If you are anxious, she becomes distant. If you are insecure, she becomes dominant. If you are jealous, she becomes secretive. If you are calm, she becomes expressive. If you are grounded, she becomes affectionate. Women hide this because admitting it would reveal that they are far more emotionally reactive to a man's energy than they pretend. They do not fall in love logically, they fall in love energetically through emotional states, through presence, through confidence, through leadership, through stability. They pick up subtle cues, tone, posture, hesitation, certainty, emotional hesitancy, and they evaluate a man's potential based on his internal world, not his external efforts. And here is a truth women never say aloud. They are not impressed by men who try to impress them. They are impressed by men who impress themselves. Purpose is more attractive than pursuit. Discipline is more attractive than desperation. Standards are more attractive than sympathy. A man who protects his time, energy, mission, and